Dear students, today we are going to take up Alexander Pope's famous poem Rape of the Lock. Let's focus upon the title of the poem. Rape of the Lock doesn't stand in its literal form, rather, it stands in its archaic form, that is an act of seizing or capturing. If we focus the title in the context of the characters, here the clipping of tress stand for seizing and capturing, rather we can say dishonoring of the lady. The genre of the poem is of course epic. Initially, this poem Rape of the Lock was published anonymously in 1712 in a famous journal, Miscellaneous Poems and Translations, and it was containing 2 cantos only. And later on, in 1714, it was revised and published with a full-fledged 5 cantos. As Shakespeare is known as a poet of mankind, Alexander Pope is known as a poet of society, and he intentionally bifurcates this poem into 5 cantos. You know that an epic has a sequential order. Of course, the division of poem in 5 cantos also gives us an opportunity to understand the beginning, middle and end, and we can easily trace out the climax of the epic through the journey of the couplet and the verses of the poem. Of course, Pope was one of the celebrated English poet for his epic poem, and he is also famous for his satirical verse, and he employs heroic couplet and iambic pentameter in his poem. Let's discuss first of all what is an epic. As you know that epic is traditional poem. It contains heroic subject and most of time supernatural characters and mighty warfare, ferocity of action, and most of time the style of an epic is grandiose and so profound, and sometimes most of the author and the writer implies exaggerated language in an epic. And if we focus upon what is mock epic in a comparative analysis, mock of course is actually a kind of a ridiculous treatment of the subject. The way we say a storm in a teacup, it's actually a kind of a mocking treatment of the storm. We will compare epic and mock epic. Let's first of all discuss what is actually the real source of inspiration for Alexander Pope for composing this long epic. Rape of the Lock was based upon an actual incident in which a British nobleman, Lord Peter, clipped a lock of hair streaming down from the head of a dazzling Arabella farmer. Peter's daring theft of lock blazed a battle between Peter and farmer families. John Carlyle, a friend of Pope's and of warring families, convinced the writer to pen down the satirizing work, exposing absurdities of and vagueness of the dispute. Obviously, it is a battle of 2 genders of the fashionable society. In composing the poem, Alexander Pope drew upon ancient and classical sources, notably Homer's great epic. If we look at the definition of epic, of course, it is a long narrative poem about the actions of a great person, and these actions are profound. They are not a common, rather they are uncommon, and exaggerated, having a profound profundity in their action. It's a comparison of epic and mock epic. Of course, an epic contains a theme of a lofty nature, and most of time it also contains some supernatural elements, journey and voyage, and lengthy speeches of the characters. When we treat the same epic in a mock epic framework, it stands for the parody of the epic, a long narrative poem which deals with a grand diction which has a trivial and ordinary theme. Let's compare two famous epics of time. For example, if we look at John Milton's famous poem Paradise Lost, of course it initiates with a sublime theme, and its opening is so fascinating, of man's first disobedience and the fruit of that forbidden tree. This was the beginning of John Milton's poem Paradise Lost, and if you look at Alexander Pope's, who commences the same subject in the very first lines, "What a dire offense from an amorous causes spring." So we have the same element in both the epic, but with a difference, specific difference. Of course, every epic begins with a theme, and there is employment of invocation of theme. The way Milton invokes muse for helping him and assisting him to tackle a mighty subject, of course, Alexander Pope also pledges to muse for equipping him to deal and tackle such a unique subject in his hand. Hero's physique, I mean the apparent structure of the protagonist, and his weapon, his paraphernalia, and parody between lines. Of course, there is a references of a voyage, supernatural beings are there, and episodic elements. I mean, the same epic is bifurcated in various sections for making the same epic so inspiring and convincing. Definitely, there are certain conflicts that makes any epic more appealing, and there are certain references of a sacrifice. Mock epic is a long humorous narrative poem that treats a trivial subject in the grand style of a true epic. Of course, a trivial subject to rape of the lock is that clipping of a tress is not a profound subject. It is a trivial element. But the way Alexander Pope treats this trivial element is such a captivating treatment. If we look at the theme of the poem, of course, trivial versus magnificent, of course, there is a theme of vanity and Pope's sarcastic comments on the society of 18th century. He speaks that no louder shrieks to pitying heavens are cast when husbands or lapdogs breathe their last. The fight between the warring families was complicated by the religion because they were Catholics in predominating Protestant country, as Pope himself was Catholic, and there were concerns that such frivolous disputes would cast another shadow on Catholics, especially because Jacobite rebellion of 1715 was brewing in Scotland to dethrone Protestant King John III. Of course, a mock epic is a kind of a parody. If we analyze the composition and the structure of Alexander Pope's same epic, he satirizes the seriousness with the friends in a circle treated with the breach of a manner.